All right.
Got it.
Well, Tom's not going to be here tonight. His son is having a birthday celebration. So we'll give a few more minutes and see who joins us tonight. If it's just a few people, that's okay too. Sometimes the smaller groups can be very interesting. Good evening, Ed. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you, Lance. How are you?
Very good. Good to see you.
Good.
And Curtis, good to see you.
I'm going to have to listen tonight because I'm driving.
Oh, well, be careful. Where are you driving to?
I just hit the Fredericksburg Co-op and I'm headed to Dharma.
Oh, okay.
Anyway,
All
we'll
right.
touch base tomorrow sometime and for any number of reasons, Lance.
Okay. How many reasons you got?
I'll think of a few.
Okay.
Anyway, I'm going to put it on mute now.
All right. Very good. All right. Well, let's get started then. And just let me start by saying that, you know, we're tonight we're talking about meditation. We kind of brought that up last week, and I thought it would be good to continue the conversation with meditation. So I sent everybody a paper that had four different descriptions of meditation, and I know it's a little bit dense, but it'd be good to talk about. But following meditation, the steps of meditation or the stages of meditation, and the book that Khenpo Samdop has written called Stages of Meditation is very, very, very helpful to us. So we've talked about this in Buddhism 101 several different times, where we've dedicated a whole cycle to going through the entire book. But tonight, I just want to refresh our memories and begin by what would be the routine of doing a meditation. So it begins with doing the opening prayers. The opening prayers are our motivation for doing our meditation, or for doing a teaching or a study, whatever it is. We want to state that motivation to ourselves to be able to maintain our proper intention. And of course, we're doing this for the benefit of the enlightenment of other beings. And these things are mindfulness practices, you know, and what that mindfulness is establishing a one-pointed mindfulness on what our purpose is and so on. And this is really what the meditation is about, is developing this one-pointed mindfulness, this focus. So these stages of meditation that we're about to do are very, very, very helpful in doing this. So Zara's coming online. So we begin with the altruistic meditation. So we're on page 1 in our prayer book, the 101 prayer book. So we'll just do this in English tonight. And we do this 3 times. I've been waiting for somebody to ask me why we do it 3 times. Does anybody know why we do it 3 times? Okay. Yes, Michael.
Once to get our mouth moving, second to get our whistle wet, and third to really know what we're saying.
Something like that. The first time we recite it is the outer meaning, you know, just taking the words, the sentences, just to get the outer meaning. And the second time we recite it is to dig a little deeper into the inner meaning. And this would be, you know, the meaning between the words, between the lines, you know, what was taught to us about why we are reciting this particular prayer and so on. And then the third time is what it means to us, what our experience with this particular prayer has been. So the first is the outer meaning, the second is the inner meaning, and the third we would call the secret meaning. This is our relationship with that particular prayer. So we begin with the altruistic motivation. All mothers, sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience. May they experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly I will establish them in the state of unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. All mothers, sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience. May they experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly I will establish them in the state of unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. All mothers, sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience. May they experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly will I establish them in the state of unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. So who would like to comment on the meaning of this prayer?
Lance, are you looking for anything super specific when you ask that question?
Well, what's the meaning of this prayer?
Well, I mean, I'm just looking at the title of it, Altruistic Motivation, as a keyword. Is it like a derivative of compassion? Like the action of the prayer to support compassion for suffering, for those that are suffering?
Well, it certainly has that in there, sure. Yeah.
This is like a meta practice. Huh?
A meta practice?
Meta, yeah.
What does that mean?
Metta is Sanskrit for loving kindness, a loving kindness practice where you send out loving kindness to increasingly distant and sometimes not so friendly beings until you end up sending it out like metta, like the sun. So you're sending out loving kindness like the sun. I mean, this is, yeah, it looks just like a meta practice. What I'd like to point out that I've always found curious is the I in the last short paragraph.
Swiftly I will establish them.
Yeah, so that leads me to believe that this is a prayer that was maybe either written in with somebody else's voice in mind, or this is suggesting that the broader I, like all of us who might be saying this, are already enlightened and we just don't quite know it. So we're responsible for that enlightenment.
Okay. Anybody else have a comment about this? What about the point that it's saying that all mothers, sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience. So it's easy to have loving kindness for our family, our friends, and so on. But for those who consider me to be their enemy, those who stand in my way of peace and happiness and so on, especially to them, I'm motivated to help those beings. So this is a strong motivation, for all beings, and it's something that we recite every time. Louisa, what do you think about this?
when I look at this, I think you're praying for, like you said, you love all your family, your friends, people you associate with, and everything. But then when you turn to your enemies, how do you see them? So I'm looking at them saying, all your enemies and obstructors and people, I'm saying people, but all that hate you, you're wishing them happiness, you're wishing them that they don't suffer, you're wishing them goodwill, you're wishing them love, and you're wishing them that they become Buddhas. They become Buddha also because it's in their nature as well. So I'm just saying you're praying for your enemies.
Okay. What do you think about the last line? Swiftly, I will establish them. What do you think about that? Does anybody have a comment about that? Ed, what do you think?
Hi, good evening.
We have two Ed J's. That's
Oh.
interesting. Yes.
That's interesting. Is
Yeah.
that the Ed J?
Ed J, go ahead and comment, please.
Yes, good evening. To establish is that basically the becoming the Buddha, the Buddhahood, it's available to everyone.
Okay. Ed Jones, what do you think?
Yeah. Excuse me. Yeah, I gotta leave where I am right now. Hold on, please. Go ahead, take somebody else, and then I'll
Yeah, can you mute your microphone there, please? Ed J, thank you.
Sorry about that.
That's all right.
I hear it as an appeal for unity. We're all in this together. And whether we agree with each other or not, I mean, whether even people I disagree with are on the same, are in the same, we're all in this together. And whether I'm adversarial to somebody or not, that doesn't matter.
Okay. Karma, you have your hand up?
Yes, for the meditation.
Yes.
Yes, I just pray now.
Do you have our prayer book? Karma, this is the first time I've seen you here. Do you have our prayer book? Do you have this prayer handy?
Yes.
Brother Lance, sorry, somehow Karma was showing us a name, but this is Dorje.
Oh, Dorji.
Hi. Yeah. So I have been listening to all the earlier responses. So regarding this prayer, it reminds me something. Sometimes it is unfathomable, to understand. It's really difficult to fathom. But the Dalai Lama and others used to say, we have to distinguish the actor and the actions. And then also in other Bibles, when they say, okay, when someone hits you on one chicken and then turn the other chickens. So this kind of a thing for ordinary, it's just difficult to implement. But this prayer are in line with those kind of unconditional, indiscriminate love and compassion towards all. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Yes. So to put it in another word, this becomes our work.
Mm-hmm.
This is our, we work to establish all beings into the state of unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and enlightenment. And this is how we are able to liberate ourselves by helping others. Because one of the things that we're trying to avoid is our ego attachment to even our spirituality. So if everything that we do with our spirituality is for the benefit of others, it's our job, it's our work, and it helps us to avoid any ego attachment that we have towards this. So it's an important feature of this particular prayer. And as you progress, if you use this system, and this is a system, if you use this system and you repeat this every day over and over and over again, there will invariably be days when you're sitting down, when meditation or your practice is not really easy to do because you're trying to overcome something that might have happened earlier in the day or yesterday, or some situation that you're about to go into later on in this day, that is going to be where there's a conflict that's involved, where somebody or something, is thinking of you as an enemy. And for us to be able to dedicate this, to be able to say, regardless that you're mad with me, you're angry with me, I'm still going to work for you to help you to attain enlightenment. So most of the time, this is going to be a breeze. You're just going to recite it, no problem. But some days, this is going to be a prayer that is going to help you focus on what the next prayer is and what the next event is in your practice. So now we go to the next prayer on page 2, which is the action bodhicitta prayer. So action, of course, is something that we're doing, and bodhicitta is the wholly enlightened mind. Bodhi is enlightenment, citta is the heart mind, the big mind. This is the little mind, this is the big mind. So the action bodhicitta, putting this bodhicitta to work. So it says here, thus, until I achieve enlightenment, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Until death, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. From now until this time tomorrow, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. So this is, very self-evident. This is a very clear prayer, very simple prayer, that everything that we are going to do with our body, speech, and mind, Om, Ah, Hom, is like the prostration that we do. Om, Ah, Hom, my body, speech, and mind. The Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, everything is going to be to help other beings, that we're going to take this action of bodhicitta and put it to work. So whether it's right now, as I achieve enlightenment, until death, whenever that comes, and from now until this time tomorrow. And we never know when tomorrow comes. Tomorrow never comes. It's always another tomorrow until we die. So, but it shows a timeless commitment to our practice. Anybody have any comment about that? Dorji, you've got your hand up there. Could you remove that hand, please? Unless you have
sure.
something you want to say right now.
Yeah, I will just think. I have this, my ignorant mind have this kind of questions. In one way, even Buddha, the deities, it's good to appreciate them, right? To please them, to make them happy by offering and so on. But on another hand, they are still reaching out to those who make them unhappy, or enemies, those who do things in contrary to what they preach. So sometimes I was wondering, like, in one way, then why we have to go on and propitiate, like we have to go on and try to please them, be there through worships. If our action doesn't matter, but they will come no matter what, even if we do worship them or not, like we are doing bad thing, but still they are coming after us and helping us out. So sometimes I have this kind of conflicting thoughts on how important it is that you have to dedicate yourself, take refugees, but at the same time, what they say, even if it's your enemy, you can go out and help them. It doesn't matter, even if you're enemy, they will still be there to help us to reach nirvana.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody have a comment about that? Dorje's asking, why do we do this? Do we realize that all the spiritual beings, all these dakinis and yoginis and so on that the Dorji's raising, it's all within ourselves. It's all within ourselves. It's our inner voice, so to speak. And we also can experience others' inner voices too, because they may be doing these things. And it's not like we're hearing some voice that comes out from nowhere. We hear it from somebody else who is acting like a dakini, or acting like a Dharma protector, or acting like a bodhisattva, and we recognize that with them. So by tuning in, by sharpening our radio, by tuning into the station and listening for that and being attuned to that is very important. And this is how we begin to see that the Dharma is everywhere. The Buddha is everywhere. Goodness is everywhere. Compassion is everywhere. And be able to hear it from other beings, from ourselves as it comes up as we do things, and to recognize it from other beings. So this particular prayer helps us to remember that. The action bodhicitta, seeing the action of the holy enlightened mind and the way it manifests within ourselves and how we see it in other beings at the same time. So let's go to the next prayer, which is page 5, which is the short refuge prayer. So we're skipping over a couple of prayers and we'll come back to them another time. But for today, I just want to concentrate on these 4 main prayers. So on page 5 is the short refuge prayer, where we're taking refuge in the 3 jewels, the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. So we say the Buddha is at our heart center, the mind of the Buddha. The speech of the Buddha is the Dharma, and the body of the Buddha is the Sangha, the community of people, the community of followers who are Buddhists and so on. So we say, in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. So this is the most important of all the prayers, because in this one prayer, we're taking refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, but we're also speaking of bodhicitta, because the bodhicitta is the second 2 lines. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. That's bodhicitta, with the generosity and other good deeds. So would anybody like to comment on this? Gary, would you make a comment about this?
Well, I think it brings it all together. I think it brings it all together, what we're supposed to be, that for me personally, there are times throughout the day, especially when I'm out and about, when the world challenges my Buddha nature, is the way I see it. There are things that happen, things that people say and do, events that happen, things that I don't expect. And when I am trying to find a quiet place inside of me in the midst of all that, in the midst of people's words, in the midst of events, I take refuge. I find solace. I find a place of retreat in Buddhism and all of its elements, the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. And I do find myself lately, in certain moments when things are happening around me or people are saying or doing things, or I'm even agitated by something I see on television. I find myself more and more thinking of that, so I can quiet my mind and not not cling to words, to events, or things that seem to disturb my Buddha nature. And I'm not very good at it yet, but I'm working on it.
Does anybody have a practice when they do these opening prayers, or do you just sit down and just try and clear your mind? What kind of a practice do you do? Louisa, how about you? When you sit down in the morning, are you reciting prayers like this, or are you just trying to clear your mind?
No, I usually start with a prayer, and it's just a little conversation with the source, and then I go into meditation. But I haven't tried these prayers at the beginning of my meditation, so I'll do that. I just try to clear my mind and think about the events that are forthcoming in the day, things that I'm going to do. Just think about people in general, send out love to all humanity, and just try to find peace within all of that. I know there's so many people struggling out there, and I just find such gratitude for all my blessings, and I'm just so thankful for that. But I haven't used these prayers to start out my meditation, but I will. I think it'll be good.
So the idea is like, putting your wheels on the track. If you're trying to get someplace like a train, and to establish a routine, to establish a repeatable program, the stages of meditation of doing this, you sit down and you say, well, what am I going to think about? Or I've got these things I want to think about. What do I need to do first? Well, I need to be able to have a sense of refuge to my practice, to the Buddha, the Dharma, and Sangha. And I have to have a sense of bodhicitta, a sense of the holy enlightened mind. So these prayers help us to establish those wheels on the track. So it's an important part. And even whether you're a long time meditator or you're a beginner meditator, using these over and over again helps, because there are times when you sit down to meditate and you might be an advanced practitioner, but sometimes you're just distracted. And if you don't do this, you might get caught up in some emotion. And we definitely do that if we're a beginner. So this is part of the stages of meditation. This is part of establishing a routine. Does anybody else like to comment on this?
I just wanted to say, Lance, because I'm like going through like journaling and reflecting and like writing things down, because I'm in the middle of, I would say, a growth cycle in relation to my journey. And I would say getting down the habit behavior, like you're saying, the positive routine, I think was once I got that, then all these other doorways started opening. But it was getting to like a set of sequenced behaviors, like get up, like doing the same physical types of behaviors that then, because I would say it took me like a year, because otherwise I was fighting, like you said, all these like negative emotions that may start early that distract from the practice. And so that was, I think, pivotal just to kind of share that openly, because I'm kind of trying to synthesize what I'm experiencing now, which is, I would say, a growth phase in my journey.
Very good. Thank you. I appreciate that. And what we're doing in this 101 cycle is a discussion, so I'm just trying to bring up different topics and introduce them. And then it's up to us to have a discussion about these things. So I appreciate what Zara said. And she's giving testimony that this is working for her. And that's really good. So I appreciate you saying that. So then the next prayer that we would recite, and if anybody doesn't have this book and wants this book, please let me know and I will mail you a copy of this, or you can download it. I can, we have the email that you can download this, or I can print a copy and send it to you. I have printed copies already. I'll be happy to mail with you, but this is what we go through every day, every time that we do a practice, every time that we have our teachings and so on like this. So the fourth prayer is the 4 immeasurables. These are the 4 vast immeasurable qualities of bodhicitta. So bodhicitta is the holy enlightened mind. So here we're enumerating them, we're remembering them, we're stating them, we're stabilizing them in our minds. So may all mother sentient beings, that we regard all beings as being our mother. And this helps us to overcome, the separation between me and somebody else. We look at all beings as that we are in this continuum together, and that everyone has been my mother. And this helps to bring that gap, minimize that gap, to see us all as the same. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky. There's so many. How many beings are there on the planet now? And how many beings have there been on the planet now? May they have happiness in the causes of happiness. That's loving kindness. If they have happiness in the causes of happiness, that the causes of happiness are recognizing having the wisdom to recognize what causes happiness. So that's loving kindness, that we recognize that. The next one is, may they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. So that's recognizing that we have suffering, the beings have suffering. And for us to have compassion in the face of that suffering is the activity, is the actualization of that wisdom. So wisdom is just, it's knowledge, it's understanding, it's seeing the causes, but then the compassion is the activity of expressing that wisdom. So whether it's we're actually doing something with our hands or doing something with our voice, doing something to help, or it's something just with our heart, that we're sending compassionate love vibrations to other beings, to all beings, or to someone specifically. So that may they be liberated from suffering and the causes of their suffering, that we recognize that actualization of wisdom, that compassion. And may they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. So this is empathetic joy that we recognize the joy that we have within ourselves for being on this path, for realizing that we have this true nature, this Buddha nature, and we're working to stabilize that to help other beings and so on. And may all beings be separated from, may they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. So if you have happiness that's free from sorrow, that's just pure joy. and that we're happy for that. We're joyous for ourselves. We're joyous for other beings that they have that. And we recognize that in other beings. Part of all this is a key word here is recognition, is seeing all this is happening all the time. And instead of recognizing the negative things, the difficult things, recognizing the happiness, recognizing the joy and so on in people's lives. And if it's not there, what we can do for it, can we show them compassion? You know, and maybe, you know, some people we can't be good friends with, but we want to be friends with people who support this, people who share this with us. So we become a little bit more selective of our friends and so on. But we don't turn away from people that are negative. We're trying to send them compassion through our hearts. We're trying to send them joy, despite the fact that they may not recognize it themselves. We recognize it, and that's what's important. So then the last line is, may they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. So equanimity, the sameness, the balance between attachment and aversion, things that we want to hold on to, things that we grasp, and things that we push away. So the attachment would be like desire, and the aversion would be hatred or anger, aggression. So we find this equanimity with all beings, whether they realize it or not. I'll treat everybody the same. And this is very liberational for us. If we treat everybody the same, then that, as I say, frees us to be able to be a happy, satisfied, joyous person who has compassion for all suffering. We know the cause of the suffering, and we try and help people with that through our heart thoughts. If we can intellectualize it, we can talk to them, speak to them, or do things for them, all to the better. But at the very least, we can send them heart thoughts. There's strong heart thoughts that we can do, and that's part of what we are developing, to have that transmission through our heart from one person to another, especially the ones who are the difficult ones, the ones who consider me to be their enemy. So we repeat this 3 times. We say, may all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. So these 4 prayers, all by themselves, are a meditation. You could spend a half hour just reciting these and contemplating the meaning of each of these prayers. And these will put your wheels on the track. And slowly, slowly, you'll begin to memorize these. And the point of memorization is that you become the embodiment of these. It's not just something that you're doing mechanically. In the beginning, it is. You do it mechanically until you memorize it. But then you find yourself in situations where maybe something terrible is happening. Maybe it's a bad storm. Maybe you're in the hospital. Maybe for yourself, maybe for somebody else. What are you going to do when you're in those situations? What are you going to say that is going to help you to find a peace of mind? Well, these 4 prayers will help you to do that. And that you become the embodiment of this Bodhicitta, this holy enlightened mind. This is what we are trying to do. You know, when we studied the Bardo Todal, that when we come to each meditation, we enter into a meditation, and then that old person that started that meditation dies. And that there is a new life that is reborn when we get up off the cushion from that meditation, from that practice, and we get up. And hopefully what we are doing is we are becoming more mindful of ourselves, more mindful of the world around us, and trying to make it a better place. So these prayers are very helpful to do that. If you want to write your own prayers, you can certainly do that, but here they are for you. These prayers are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years old, and maybe 1,000 years old, maybe 2,000 years old. And they are tried and true and things that help us to create mindfulness. So here is a system. That's what this is all about, is a system. So this is the first part of the system, is reciting these prayers. Does anybody have a comment about this? Michael, what do you think about this?
About using this set of prayers?
Yeah.
Well, I think for developing a sort of a baseline for meditation that is of the shamatha quality, and we're moving on to vipassana. I think these prayers bring to mind that which we should acknowledge before stepping into a space where we cultivate mindfulness. We talk about the short refuge prayer, and you asked what some of us do when we chant the short refuge prayer, and I raised my hand, and you didn't see that, but when I chant the short refuge prayer and I speak about the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha and refuge, I contemplate on the suchness of these resources that refuge provides. Refuge means safety. Refuge is like coming home. And when I recite the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, I sort of lift up each one in my consciousness, so I understand the part that it plays in the success of whatever comes next, whether it's a shamatha meditation or a practice. So I think all of these set the set the baseline for the vibration that we sort of need to achieve moving forward, and at the same time to set the vibration that allows us to sort of resonate with others of same mind, of same word, folks all across the globe that are chanting these things for the same reasons.
Very good. Thank you. Okay, so the next thing that we do, meditation, let me say this, is not a passive thing. Meditation is an active process. And having a script, having a method to be able to develop, to cultivate our meditation process is very important. Otherwise, we just kind of wander, we start going off on tangents and so on, and we think that we're doing good things, but we may not be attaining the peace of mind that we're really looking for. We may not be developing the loving kindness, the compassion, joy, and equanimity, the bodhicitta. So it should be second nature to us. It should just come right off our head, out of our voice, out of our minds, out of our heart, just very fluidly. So the next part is the 4 thoughts that turn the mind to the Dharma. So we've been talking about this quite a bit. And if you had your text here that we use, the 4 thoughts that turn the mind to the Dharma. And if you don't have this, I will send it to you. And this is something that we've been going over and over again. And just to be able to make a point about this, is that in the Jewel Ornamental Liberation, the stages of the path by Gampopa, which is the core book of the Kagyu lineage, and the other lineages have their same type of book that follows these same ideas, these same practices, and so on. These are the first few chapters of the Jewel Ornamental Liberation, the 4 thoughts turn the mind to the Dharma. This is the articulation of this method, why we are doing this, So if you've got this text, then we need to read this. Does somebody have this text open right now? Okay, Michael? Michael, would you read page 1, please? Precious human life. Why we are on this path.
The freedoms and advantages, so extremely difficult to obtain, accomplish the purpose of human life. If one does not achieve benefit from this now, how could this opportunity come again? Ho, this kind of leisure and endowment is supremely difficult to obtain. When one obtains a body which is easily lost, do not waste it meaninglessly, but rather use it to attain ultimate liberation, joyous result.
Okay,
it's been said. You want me to do the italic?
Continue, yes.
Yeah, it's my favorite part. It's been said, to be born a precious human being is more difficult than a blind turtle at the bottom of a vast ocean, greater than all the oceans combined on earth, rising up from the depths of the water once every 100 years in order to poke its head through a single small wooden yoke floating on the ocean's surface. Those who have good fortune to make a connection with the teachings are rare, and those who really take them to heart and embody them in their actions, even rarer. As rare, in fact, as stars in broad daylight.
Thank you. So out of the 7.5 billion people that are alive today on this planet, how many of them have a precious human life? How many of them have really taken to heart the purpose of human life and that have the freedoms and advantages that are spoken of here and so on? Very few. You know, I can't qualify a number. I can't quantify a number, you know, whether it's 1 million or 2 million or 100,000, but it's a good number. And it's a number that maybe we'd like to think is increasing. But the real point is that there's so many more who have no clue, who don't have precious human life. But it's incumbent upon us to recognize that we do have a precious human life and that we are going to practice this life. We are going to use this life to help other beings.
Don't we all have a precious human life, whether we recognize it or not?
Not the way it's defined here, no, because this is, we all have a human life. These 7.5 billion people have a human life. But how many of them recognize their spirituality, whether it's Buddhist or whether it's Hindu or whether it's Jewish or whether it's Islam? How many of them have a spiritual life? How many recognize that?
Life is only precious if I have a spiritual life?
The way it's being defined here, our precious human life is being defined as someone who recognizes that they have a spirituality about them.
Okay.
Yes, because in an ordinary life that is just physical and intellectual is just mundane, is not working for the betterment of others and so on. So being able to recognize a precious human life gives you a motivation. It says here, if one does not achieve benefit from this now, how could this opportunity come again? Most people don't realize that. Most people don't have a clue about that. Or the way you bring up the question is all life precious?
Yeah, I think I'm going back to a discussion we had last week about enlightenment, where we're all enlightened. It's just a question of getting the stuff out of the way that blocks our path. And to me, if we all start enlightened, if our baseline for all of us is enlightenment, then we're all precious. I don't know, maybe I'm.
Well, it's a way in which it's defined.
Okay.
So we're saying, the definition of precious human life is one who recognizes that spirituality, who recognizes that enlightenment potential.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you.
Would anybody else like to comment about that?
I have a quick question.
Okay.
So the gentleman just also raised a doubt. I too have a difficult to understand about this precious human life, in the sense, conception seems so easy, and there's so many people in this world, billions, 7 billions, and so on. And unless there was this population control, there's the danger of overpopulations. And then at the same time, even though we have a life, not all lives are good, that there's so much suffering going on in places like Africa and elsewhere as well. So a lot of sufferings as well. So what does this preciousness of life here try to signify? I mean, like you gave an example earlier in the prayer. There was an example of how difficult it is to. Does that mean how difficult it is to get a life, to be born into a human being, like this blind tortoise raising up from the auction like 100 years? So it's so difficult, but in reality, when we look around, it seems like a human conception life seems so easy. And so I try to understand in what context it is saying. Is it saying like the opportunity to practice Buddha Dharma? You mentioned a very important thing, spirituality. So only human beings, we are in this form, are able to pursue that spirituality. So is that why it's so precious?
Well, yes. And that's the point of all these prayers, is to give us motivation that leads us to meditation. To get to meditation, we have to do contemplation. And to be able to explore these ideas, these conceptual ideas, is what these prayers are identifying for us. They're identifying these conflicts. They're identifying these doubts. They're identifying these how would you say, difficulties, so that we can contemplate them, so that we can purify them, that we can recognize what is difficult within ourselves and what it is that leads us to the meditation. If the meditation is described as being just having a peace of mind, not having attachments, not having aversions to these thoughts, how do we get to that point? Do we just say, I'm not going to think about attachments, I'm not going to think about aversions? It's not that easy. We have to go through a process of elimination, of exhaustion, of thinking about what these problems are, and then finding that there ultimately it's all just temporary. It's all just stuff of the mind, the intellectual mind. And that we have to rest the intellectual mind and be able to be stable in that intellectual mind, being rested like that. And then what we begin to recognize is that all things, you see, are in a balance. All things are in this equanimity, bodhicitta, this equanimity. But we're so involved with this grasping or that aversion and so on that we miss that. We don't see it. We're too much involved with our day-to-day survival. And so many people, 7.5 billion people, most of them, that's what they're involved with, is their everyday survival. But a precious human life is being defined as someone who has that bodhicitta and recognizes that bodhicitta and is able to practice that bodhicitta and to not take it for granted, to realize that this is a gift that we have given ourselves. We've given ourselves this life, and not to waste it meaninglessly, but rather to use it for the ultimate liberation, joyous result, which is the meditation mind, which is Mahamudra. We might define that as the word Mahamudra, the great position, or Dzogchen, the great liberation, the great perfection. This great spirituality, recognizing our spiritual nature. So meditation, this process of meditation is going through, saying these things for the outer meaning, then looking at the inner meaning that we've read about or we've been taught, and then looking at it as it relates to us. What are our doubts about it? What are our concerns about it? What do I need to understand it more? What do I need to research? What do I need to simply abide in? What do I need to just rest in? So this is the process. And then if we're successful, we get to the meditation part, which is where we have peace of mind, where it's just peaceful. And we can see thoughts coming and going, but they don't stop. We don't fixate on those. Everything is just moving very gently on its own accord. This is the meditation. This is what we're trying to do. It says here in this sheet that I gave you, the fourth definition, it says, during all daily activities, whatever you are doing, whether there is thought, occurrence, or stillness, whether you feel anger, desire, happiness, or sadness, whether it's past, future, or right now, at all times, there is merely something to recognize, not something to meditate on. Just to recognize all this as being the same, as being equanimity, as being bodhicitta. And that's very subtle. It's very quiet. It's very peaceful. And if you think about who great meditators are, or what it appears to be, if we look at the images of the Buddhas and so on, or other great beings, whether they're Buddhists or not, maybe they're Christians or maybe they're Islamic or so on, but you see beings that that have a certain peace of mind and what they had to do to be able to get that peace of mind. That serenity, that happiness. So that's what we're, yes.
Thank you. This really very thought-provoking. I read a psychologist called Abraham Maslow. So according to him, human beings have a hierarchy of needs.
A hierarchy of needs?
Yeah, hierarchy of needs.
Yes.
So he mentions like the basic needs, and then safety needs, and then self-esteem needs, and then and so on, like the four hierarchy of needs, and it goes up, and then on the top of the pyramids, it has the self-actualization needs. So my question here is Buddha Dharma practice meant for all people of all rank, people of all stages, or is it meant only for those people who fulfill their basic needs, and then they go up a little bit, they have their safety needs, and then they also have self-esteem needs, and then when it's come to the self-actualization needs, that is, which means to fully realize your potential. So I was wondering, this Buddha Dharma practice, in terms of need, it ranks like on the top of the pyramids, because according to Abraham Muslim, without fulfilling those below needs, those basic needs, you can't just jump up to the highest needs. So for example, a beggar, a person who has nothing, or homeless, who is destitute, both, for them Buddha Dharma is also a practical things for them to make their lives better, or if only those who are have a certain reach their financial freedoms, and then they have a free time to think and reflect and fully realize their potential, then it is for them.
Dharma, Buddha nature, everyone has that. All beings have that already. All sentient beings. Animals have that. Human beings have that. The difference is between animals and human beings is that human beings can recognize that, where animals cannot recognize their own self-nature, cannot recognize that Buddha nature, but they are sentient beings. They have a consciousness and so on. So when we study the 6 realms of being a human being, when we talk about the 6 realms of a human being, and we've talked about that many times, the Deva realm, the Asura realm, the human realm, the animal realm, the hungry ghost realm, and the hell realms, these are all psychophysical dramas of being a human being. And human beings can be rich or poor, they can be men and women, they can be young or old, and so on. But all of them have Buddha nature within themselves. But do they recognize it? And that's the question. Those that are born into a very poor life in terms of money or something, they have difficulties for sure. But can they liberate themselves? Can they find the Dharma? Do they have the ability to recognize the Dharma and then accept that they have this particular kind of life and say, okay, this is the way I have to live. Maybe I can improve things, but I have to also accept the way I'm born. So we have to accept that if we're born a woman, and we always want to be a man, then we're suffering. But can we be born a woman and think, oh, I'm happy being a woman, it's a wonderful thing? Or vice versa, that we're born a man and we want to be a woman. So it's just a matter of our appearances. It's a matter of our interpretation of what life is. And if we get caught up in those interpretations, that we drive ourselves into confusion all the time. We're not happy. We're suffering all the time. Can we be happy with who we are? And the point here is now the monastics, whether they're Buddhist monastics or whatever tradition they follow, the monastics, they give up everything to live a life of poverty. They have nothing. They're completely dependent upon the welfare of other beings giving them things. So they may be born kings or princes, as Buddha Shakyamuni was, born a prince, but yet gave it all up to be poor in order to be able to concentrate on what it is to be to have a precious human life. Yes, Dorji.
Thank you so much.
So again, these are things to contemplate. These are things to think about. And there's books to support. There's teachings here. What we can do in Buddhism 101 is just introduce you to some ideas. but there's many books, there's many other teachers who will go into great detail about these things. There are great teachings that you can watch online, or that you can come to the Dharma centers when things open up out of COVID and so on. So, we can't expect that in a 2-hour weekly session that we're going to answer all the doubts. We're exposing the things that we need to think about, because in those things are our liberation.
I think, though,
Go ahead, Ed.
Dorje's reference to Maslow's hierarchy is something. I mean, I appreciate that, because I've thought about it myself, and I think the point is there, or I think Maslow would say, and he's not a Buddhist to my knowledge, but that it's harder to live out of the heart mind. It's harder to live out of the big mind when you have basic subsistence needs. Those you've got to be fed and clothed and sheltered before you can, well, in Maslow's terms, grow towards self-actualization, which I think in Buddhism terms, in part, would be at least learn to orient around the heart mind rather than the head mind. I don't know. I may be putting things together that don't belong.
Well, does that mean it's impossible?
I think, well, again, he's not a Buddhist, but I think he would say, until you have your subsistence needs met, yes, it's impossible or unlikely.
Can we say that those subsistence needs need to be put in some kind of balance?
I'm not sure I understand.
Well, let me use an example, and I don't, there are people who are born into slavery.
Right.
Whether it was the Jewish slaves, during the time of the Egyptian pharaohs, or maybe it was the slaves that were made to work in the camps in Germany and Poland during the World War II, or maybe it was the slaves that 100 years ago were a little more than 100 years ago in America, that were brought here, by unscrupulous means to come here and everything. Were there not beings who spoke of an enlightenment? Were there not beings who lived a life of enlightenment, who helped others and who showed others how to help themselves and so on like that? Now, maybe they weren't to the degree that we could think of Buddha Shakyamuni, but there were beings that were selflessly helping other beings. And is that not an enlightenment? Is that not living compassion? Is not realizing that there is a precious human life that is worth saving and so on?
No, I wouldn't dispute that, but
so I'm making the point that it's relative, that all these things are making relative judgments that are artificial.
Right. But I don't mean to chase this off into the woods, but whether your subsistence needs are being met probably is relative too.
Well, you want to put it in these terms? Put it in the terms of the Buddha, the story of the Buddha. When the Buddha went off into the caves, and he spent 6 years and became the starving Buddha. He said, "Oh, I can renounce life. I can give up everything. I can even give up eating."
Okay.
And after 6 years, he became emaciated, and he no longer could think properly. He no longer could meditate properly. So then he comes down out of the caves, and he goes down and he starts eating and receiving nourishment. And then he says, "Oh, I've got this body. I got to take care of this body. Otherwise, I can't do the other things."
Right.
So there is a common sense to that. And that was, something that the Buddha spoke about. So, but again, it's finding a balance.
Right. Okay.
Hey, Lance?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's worthwhile reflecting on a couple of things. First off, the Maslow's taxonomy, the top of Maslow's taxonomy is not enlightenment. It's self-actualization. So it's the capacity to actualize your own self. It's a self-powered scenario. If you have all the resources like safety or self-esteem is intact, you have some aesthetics around you. A lot of it, some people relate to being on a certain class. You don't have to worry about certain things. Then you have the time, you have the space, you have the headspace to take who you are and turn it to something actionable in your life. That really was never meant to be equated to any sort of enlightenment whatsoever. And then the other thing that I made a note of was, I think there was a lot of conversation around, and you know, Ed, I know Ed has read this stuff before, the precious human life, but I don't think it's worthwhile even discussing precious human life, the qualities of the human life, without really knowing the 8 leisures and the 10 endowments. I mean, those are the qualities that make it precious, not the relative value we place on it, and not our freedom from suffering, and not just the opportunity for enlightenment, but all of these other things is what really makes it precious, because these are the things that really thins the pool down a little bit, right? I mean, freedom from all these unfavorable conditions and all of these endowments, and that's where you end up. You know, that's where it becomes clear how you're talking about 1% of 1% of 1%.
Well, it's very good. Thank you for bringing that up, for saying that. Yes. And you're absolutely right about that. Yes. So, but it doesn't say, you know, but it is talking in relative terms, you know, to be satisfied with the time that we have and the food that we have and so on like that. So it's contemplation. You know, the bottom line to it is that we have to contemplate this, so we have to see this. And ultimately, what is the self? You know, the self-actualization or the self-realization. What is that? You know, does the self exist? Or is the self a concept that we hold on to, that we think that is permanent, that there is a permanent self?
Yeah,
So,
agreed. Self-actualization is pandering to our delusion, but
yes,
but it's still, which, ridiculous as it seems, which is theoretically the epitome of human intellectual and spiritual existence, according to you know, psychologists 50, 80 years ago. So, yes.
Yeah, and that's one of the 4 extreme views. You know, the self, the individual, the egoistic being, and so on. And that's one of the extreme views that we hold on to. You know, do we have a persona? Yes. Do we create the persona? Yes. Do we have to constantly adjust that persona to situations and so on? If we're healthy, I think so. You know, or do we just bull our way through all the time and create this persona for ourselves and not have any regard to the changes, that we're bigger than the changes? So this is impermanence and emptiness. When we start talking about emptiness. So you can see that this has a lot of nuance to it. And it's the point of do we just take it for granted? Do we slough it off and say it's not important? Or do we try and find a balance with it, try and understand it, try and understand what the meaning is, try and understand what the 8 leisures and the 10 endowments are, what it is to be a precious human life as it's being defined here. So everybody's, you know, you all have this, or those of you don't, I'll send it to you. but this is part of the stages of meditation. You know, as we're talking about. Are there other meditation programs? Yes, there's lots of different ones, but they have their method of going through certain things and so on. And how stable does that meditation become? How many people have tried different meditations? Zara, what kind of meditations, what meditations have you tried that you can talk of briefly?
Thank you. Transcendental meditation.
Okay. So what would you call that? How would that fit into what our discussion?
Well, that's a mantra-based practice to provide a tool to make you more self-aware of what's going on in your head.
Does it work?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay.
You're constantly like, oh my gosh, I only made it 10 seconds that time. I'm like, I made it 3 seconds.
How come are you practicing it now?
Yeah, I practice very thoughtfully and with intention right now on breath, mantra, object, and compassion. And they're all very uniquely challenging in their own ways when I engage with them specifically. And I do that daily, Lance. I have a daily, the breath right now is hardest for me to do, but
Okay.
it's interesting because I'm, have a scientific sort of mind. I'm analytical. So I approach this whole process with a scientific sort of endeavor of curiosity and willingness to kind of be progressive with how am I responding to these different opportunities.
So you just mentioned 4 or 5, ways of meditating or methods and so on.
Yeah.
And if I can paraphrase or just say, they all lead to the same place. And it's a question of how easy they are, stable it is, or something like that. And you see it all as the same.
Why is the breath the hardest for you to do, Zara?
Well, that's a really good question. So it's all like going back to what Lance is saying, everything's like all these relative comparisons, right? With A to B or whatever. So compassion, I'm directing my brain to something, right? I'm thinking like where your brain is directed to like engage in something else. When the object, it's just, there's something competing for my thought space, where the breath is so intangible to me. I think it's not as salient. So like I can think of compassion and think about a whole bunch of people in my life that need it. So I see them come up in my head and like I'm hugging them. Object, I'm looking at it. And then the mantra, I'm saying it. They're very salient. And so like your brain is like, that's what I'm focusing on. The breath is just sort of like this fluid, abstract thing that is harder for me to like give it a permanent product in my brain of what does a breath look like that I can focus on, because that defeats the purpose too, I think, right, Lance? If you take the breath and then change it into an object in your head, is that right? That defeats the purpose of that process.
Right. You just look at it for what it is.
Right.
Yes.
That's why it's hard for me personally, Gary, although breath seems to be something that I think is universally said, like that's the easiest thing you always have with you, like your breath. It's
right,
hard.
Let me move on. Louisa had her hand up. She wanted to say something, I think, before. Is that right, Louisa? That you have? No? Okay, my mistake.
Michael has his hand up, Lance.
Oh, okay, Michael.
Yeah. For those who haven't had a lot of experience with meditation, I just wanted to make sure that we recognize that not only are there different sorts of meditation, and a lot of those meditations have to do with the object of meditation or the non-object of meditation, but it's the taxonomy. There's concentration meditation, there's mindfulness meditation, there's heartfulness meditation, there's inquiry meditation, of which Vipassana sort of bleeds into that. Vipassana is mindfulness based that leads towards inquiry. Or insight meditation. And then there's awareness meditation, and then embodiment meditation. So those are the the 6 large classes of meditation that we see being practiced today.
Michael,
Okay.
that's like a whole course. Like now I'm like, my brain just, wow, my brain just expanded with that information. Thank you.
Okay, good. All right, so if we can, let's move on to the next part of the 4 thoughts that turn the mind to the Dharma, which is impermanence. So does someone have their text? Gary, do you have your text available? Can you read this?
I just had it in my hand. Just give me a moment, please. Seem to have everything but impermanence. I know I have it.
Be page 2 and 3.
That's precious human life. Here it is, impermanence. Okay. I'm sorry, I got this mixed up. I want to make sure that I have it.
All right, shall we move on then?
Well, I have page 2.
Okay, you got page 3. Page 3 is the other side of page 4.
Okay, yes. Okay. No matter what has been done, nothing benefits at the time of death. Worldly activities, yes, they are lies. The 8 worldly dharmas are like a painted rainbow. Think you can put your trust in them? And the certainty of death and knowing that nothing remains long, quickly accomplish liberation. Impermanence makes departure certain like the shadow of the setting sun. Abandoning laziness and indifference, blaze like fire and fierce diligence. This life is impermanent, like clouds in the autumn sky. Birth and death migrators are the same, like actors in a play or dance. The life of beings is like lightning in the sky, like water falling from a steep mountain cliff. It departs quickly. The nature of all phenomena is impermanence. Death is a certainty to all who are born. Death can descend anytime, like a drop of morning dew on a blade of grass. Quick, it is time to make effort for the essence of the Dharma.
Okay, thank you. So it's saying the 8 worldly concerns, the things that we think about most all the time are gain and loss, pleasure and pain, fame and disgrace, and praise and blame. These are things that we think about all the time, but can we just suspend that? Can we leave that and just be able to allow ourselves to recognize the space that is around us, the temporariness of our lives that is full of these 8 worldly concerns, and be able to recognize the space that is around us. This life is impermanent. It departs quickly, like water falling from a steep mountain cliff. So all these different visualizations that are in this prayer give us an idea of what it is to have a finite life, a short life, and how we have this responsibility to ourselves, if we accept it, to be able to recognize this temporary nature and be able to transcend, to be able to move through that, to be able to see ourselves as precious human beings who have many lives, who go through different lives and so on. So we talk about that. It says, in the certainty of death and knowing that nothing remains long, quickly accomplish liberation. Impermanence makes departure certain, like the shadow of the setting sun. Are we preparing ourselves for change? Are we allowing ourselves, or are we holding on to this life and thinking, oh, I'm gonna live forever? Oh, death isn't going to come, or when death comes, I don't know how it's going to come, but may it come in without any pain and so on. What kind of conflict do we think about when we think about death? What kind of doubts do we have when we think about death? So here it's saying that all this life is impermanent, and we've had many different lives, and we've been faced with this many different times. And to be able to relax and to be able to let this impermanence just take its course, and be able to see that it's just like changing our clothes. Going from one life to another is just like changing our clothes. So being able to recognize these things are liberating. It says, the nature of all phenomena is impermanence. That's the one thing that we can count on, that everything is impermanent, everything will change. Death is a certainty to all who are born. Death can descend anytime, like a drop of morning dew on a blade of grass. So the point here is to use this as a contemplation that may develop into a peace of mind, that may develop into an insight, that may develop into a quietude of presence. And this is a method. This is part of the practice of developing meditation. These different aspects, the precious human life, the impermanence, the karma that we're going to talk about soon, and then the suffering that we go through in this life and so on, these are things that all these thoughts, all these emotions, all these things that we sit down when we're going to do practice or meditation, that these are the thoughts that are running around in our head. But here are the solutions to those problems. Here is a focused way of method of being able to deal with each of these in their own time, in their own space, without getting too many things going at one time and we don't accomplish anything. Here is a set, repeatable program in which we can use for meditation. Can anybody comment on this? Ed?
What does the line below the last one you read, abandoning laziness and indifference, blaze like fire and fierce diligence? I don't know what that means.
Of trying to understand what this is. In other words, not to just take this for granted, not being lazy about what impermanence is, not being indifferent to what impermanence is. Seek it out. What does it mean? Educate yourself. Just don't take it for granted, and do it with such conviction, to do it with such commitment that it's like blazing in a fire with fierce diligence.
Thank you. That helps.
I made the point earlier, that we're not going to solve these doubts in 1-2 hour session. We have to do these things over and over again. This is what the practice is all about. This is this is a lifestyle. This is bringing this into our life. And then what happens is we begin slowly to become more mindful, to become more relaxed, to recognize our enlightenment. So many people, come into the Dharma Center and they say, oh, I'm so emotional. I want to relax and everything. I hear meditation is good for that. And then we enroll them into Buddhism 101, or, you know, into the teachings and so on. And then slowly over time, but it doesn't happen in a week. It doesn't happen in 2 weeks. It doesn't happen in a month. It doesn't happen in a year in most cases. It doesn't happen in 2 years, but it is a process. And then the people that are here that have been doing this for a couple of years or more will tell you, yes, it took me a while to really get into what this is, but it works. It's made a difference in my life. So we each have to approach this in our own way, but using this as a guide. Now, there's other systems. You know, you don't have to do this particular system. This isn't the only way, but this is the system that we talk about. And like I said, it's not passive, it is active. We are purifying ourselves. We are examining ourselves. We're the ones who are making all the complications, and we're undoing all the complications. We're taking our life apart and then putting it back together again. That's what the Dharma is. The Dharma is identifying all those composite pieces, and then we strip them out, and then we're standing there, you know, virtually naked. And then we say, okay, now I got the rest of my life to live. Now I start putting things back together again. And there's a whole lot of things that we leave on the floor. A whole lot of things that we say, I don't need anymore. I simplify my life and so on. So this is what this process that we call meditation is all about. And that we cure ourselves of our attachments. We cure ourselves of our aversions. We cure ourselves of our emotions. We begin to recognize those emotions, the causes of those emotions, and the antidotes of those emotions, and so on. And then what do we become? We become Buddha. We become the awakened one. Anybody else want to comment on this?
I was gonna say that was really so deep what you just said to us. Like the last couple minutes, I was like digesting that, and everything you said as a personal anecdote is what I've been going through my time with you. Everything you literally just said, a summary, is my experience right now. I'm walking through.
Well, thank you. Yes. Yes, and I've had my teachers, and I've been through this. You know, I've been doing this for what, almost 50 years.
And I want to say, like, just like, because this is a discussion, because I've become, I'm struggling right now. I feel like, Ed, like, to speak to you a little bit on this, like my foot, it's like I have like 1 foot in, 1 foot out, right? Like it's like this transition process where I'm there halfway. And I'm uncomfortable sometimes, Lance, with fighting like, oh, this is what Lance is talking about, or this is it right here. This is the moment where, like you said, you're living and breathing it. And now I'm catching myself so much more. And I'm like catching myself. I don't want to let that go. Like the attachment, like I'm recognizing the attachment. And I'm like, this is what Lance is talking about. This moment in your life is what all the teachings are about. And you're attached to it. So you get to be reborn until you can see like what is happening right now with you. Like you love this drama. You love this afflictive emotion because you keep going back to it. And it's uncomfortable, Lance, and all of you. It's uncomfortable because I kind of like it a little bit, but I don't like it. So I'm kind of like 50-50 with like the benefit. I've started contacting that, like you said, simplification and like recognizing, but then there's also like, why, like I keep my ego and all this other is like the drama, the social media issues, all this crap. Like it's like the reinforcement of that too. It's like split and it's weird, right? Like I oscillate daily right now, Lance, and it's a struggle. It's like the dark side, right? The like I'm thinking of Star Wars. Like the struggle inside is like daily for me is like I can go 50-50, and then catching myself in it has become so uncomfortable. when I like catch my own hand in the cookie jar, like the afflictive emotion cookie jar. I'm like, Zara, stop. So it's just really it's hard right now. The process I'm going through right now is very difficult because it's like really deep work, Lance, and it's intense sometimes emotionally, where I'm like, stop doing that.
We're both being seduced and intoxicated, and being able to recognize those things that are happening within ourselves, and to be able to ward them off. And really the thing about it is to be able to remove yourself from the situation, is to have a place that you can go to in your home, a meditation space. It doesn't have to be anything special, anything, but it's just where you can close the door and you can say, for the next half hour or 15 minutes or an hour, whatever you can do. Of course, the more time that you can do it, the more time that you repeat it over and over again, the more powerful it becomes. So here in this paper again is a quote. It says, "For practice, it is said, the best looseness makes the best meditation." The best looseness. That we're not holding on to these things, we're loose. It says medium looseness makes medium meditation. And the lowest looseness makes the lowest meditation. So if we're going in and we're all agitated and doing all these things, we may have a result, but it may not be a real good result. But if over time, if we can practice being more relaxed, more loose, more contented, more satisfied, turning off the TV more often, not reading those emails, or not reading the chasing down those ideas on Facebook or whatever other things that you look at. Say, I'm not going to play that game anymore.
That's hard. So hard.
But
So
that's
hard.
the challenge. Yes, Louisa.
Well over a year ago, I ran into that wall also, and I turned off the television, and I haven't watched it. I can say I haven't watched anything at all. At first I thought, I'm so used to catching the news, doing this. And then time went by, and I used to even see that, I think they call it Nextdoor. It's a site where you go on looking for services and that kind of thing. Plumber, you're looking for a plumber or a mechanic or whatever. And I would run across some discussion there about politics, or about who's wearing masks and who's not wearing masks, and kids in school. And I found myself getting caught up in that. And then one day I said, no, I don't need to worry myself about that. I need to free myself from that and stop even looking at them or watching TV anymore. And you know what? I haven't missed it. I just feel like I'm free. I'm free from that attachment of people's negativity over and over and over. And it was just like, I freed myself, and it feels so good to have left that behind, because the peacefulness and the joy that comes from that. I read a lot. I meditate. I'm not perfect, but I do other things that I paint that fulfill me inside as a person. I had to let all that go. And once I did that, I felt so liberated, and I don't miss it at all. It's just gone. And I have no desire to go back and watch what's going on, because it's freedom from that.
Yeah.
Those two things. That's next door and the network news. That's samsara. Yeah.
Lance, can I pose a question to the group about this, or do you need us to keep moving? I had a
Oh, go right
question.
ahead. What is it?
Well, I wanted to ask anyone else, like kind of along, because like that, Louisa, that's such a good example. And I was thinking like today, I went and got a Starbucks. I had to do a training online, and and then in that moment, I had a little bit of what I would call like a high, like an endorphin high, right? I had a dopamine hit. I was excited. And then I recognized that, oh, Zara, this is a false high. Don't get attached to this state of over elation, right? Because when you come down, then you're going to feel like, oh, I've lost something, right? You're going to crash and feel. I wondered if anyone else, do you all catch yourselves? Because then it's like, yeah, letting go of the negative stuff makes sense. Like, don't get caught, but also like attaching to those highs, like where you feel really elated and like someone's like, oh, you did such a good job. Like I had a lot of positive attention after my training and it felt really good, right? Like I felt like awesome. But then like I caught myself like, don't stay on that, right? Like don't, right. And I was wondering, because then but then it's like counterintuitive to your brain. You're like, oh, I should be grateful and thankful that people recognize me. And that feels so good. But that is what you're talking about on the other end. And that, right, Lance? I mean, like I wanted to talk about that because I think that's false as well, right? Being attached to the other end of negativity. And I wonder, did anyone else go through this process where you catch it happening and recognize this is also an opportunity here to practice this process? Like, because the negative is so obvious, right? Like it's more obvious, I think, and I wondered if anyone would be willing to share if you have gone through that and captured that, and how did you feel about letting go of that as well?
Okay, who wants to answer that? Louisa?
When I've caught myself doing that, my awareness comes into play, and the first thing I think in my head is ego, and that turns it off real fast for me. And I just thought, oh yeah, I recognize that ego, and then I just let it go. Okay, that was a good performance or whatever you did, to help. And I just ego, it just flashes in my head, and then that helps me let it go.
Anybody else?
Good evening. Namaste.
Yeah. Yes, Ed.
Yes, negative and negative thoughts, positive thoughts are relative from the standpoint of the value, the context that you attach to it, the content that you attach to it, right? So when something good happen, you do good work, somebody gives a compliment, it's recognize it, recognize the acknowledge the recognition. Because once that happens, you said, okay, I did good. If you did good, you did good. And likewise, if you did bad, you did bad, right? So you're seeing reality for what it is, where you're not really, that's what I have done, right? That's what I have done. Where, because otherwise, even when I was not even aware of I've done the Vipassana, different type of meditation. I'm a Wing Chun Kung Fu practitioner, all that stuff. But even before I even was aware of spirituality, like 14, 15 years ago, I just made it so that when I do something, and I get positive feedback, I was already in the know that I'm doing the work, right? So when the feedback comes, it was just like, okay, I get a card. Oh, Mr. Joseph, you've done so well. This is what you've done for the school, what have you. It's just acknowledge it. Okay, thank you. And then from there, move on. And so that, because again, during that time, when I was doing it, I was not aware of the impermanence. of life, the impermanence of things. And now that I have some awareness of it, because everything is really fleeting, like a thought. One moment you're thinking very positive, and the next moment a thought comes in, and then now it's almost like a seesaw. So once you have the realization, the recognition, the acknowledgement, it is what it is. Exactly what Lance was saying, that this so-called life that we're living is, again, what makes it interesting is the ebb and flow. Once you can put yourself in between that ebb and flow by the awareness, by being aware of it, how it feels. Okay, it feels good. Okay. And then you move on. Or it feels bad. It's a negative feeling. That's the conditioning that we attach to it. So that's the approach that I've been, somebody said, ride the waves. Exactly. Right? Go with the flow, right? Go with the flow, so to speak. So that's the approach that that I have adapted unknowingly. However, now that through my my finding Vipassana basically concretized that what I did not know, that I was doing it almost incidentally.
Very good. Thank you, Ed. That was very good. Thank you. Anybody else have a comment? I'd like to share something with you. In deity yoga practice, deity yoga is recognizing ourselves as having all these different aspects to our lives. You know, the analogy I always use is that we have this diamond nature, this indestructible diamond nature that is in our heart center. And this diamond nature is made up of loving kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity, bodhicitta, the holy mind of enlightenment. This is what it's all made up of. And all these different aspects of the diamond are the different ways in which that bodhicitta is actualized, the way it's brought forward, the way that you share it with others, and so on. And all this is within yourself. So in deity yoga, this is one of the things that's very special, characteristic of this type of Buddhism that we practice, is seeing yourself as these different deities, as these different aspects. We're not going to see ourselves as every single one. There's going to be several that we're going to see, you know, for some time, and we're going to continue to practice them, and we get better and better at it. But the point I want to make now is that there's one in particular that becomes the manifestation of the power of bliss and emptiness. That we see ourselves, we see our human life in this planet, this whole life that we have is this manifestation of bliss and emptiness. And we have great gratitude for that. And we have great responsibility to that for ourselves, and especially for other beings. That we are sharing that with other beings. We're seeing that why do we have this life? Why were we born? What's the purpose of our life? You know, and in this particular manifestation, in this particular deity, this deity yoga, this union with the deity, it is for the power of bliss and emptiness. The bliss is this very sublime, very balanced, very mindful, very awakened sensibility of who we are, what we are doing, and so on. And it's without thought. It's just transcendent. It's just there. It's just perfectly natural, perfectly effortless. But at the same time is this emptiness. And this emptiness speaks that it is conceptual, that is a human being who is recognizing this, but it is just a state of mind. And the beauty of it is that we just let that go, that state of mind go. We don't have any attachment to it. We don't have any aversion to it. It just is. And then this is what allows us to then become what we call enlightened, to recognize our enlightenment. That everything that we're doing is just temporary. Everything is just compounded stuff that we load ourselves up with. But as we go through this process, we're lightening our load. It becomes simpler so that we can recognize this emptiness, the simplicity of life. So this is what we're all really searching for in the name of freedom. We all want to be free. We want to be free of our suffering. We want to be free of our confusions. We want to be free of undue responsibilities, of having to turn the television on at 6 o'clock to watch the news, of our routines. We want to be free of all that. And one day we're going to die. And when we do, we face that freedom because we no longer have a body. We no longer have an intellectual mind. All we are is that spirituality at that point. And how prepared are we for that? And that's what all this is about, is recognizing the power of that bliss and emptiness, because that's when it becomes real. And when I say real, we're in this reality. We're in this dualistic reality now. But now we move away from that, and all this just becomes, we see it as just as it is, as an illusion, as just a series of appearances. It's like watching a movie. So I wanted to share that with you.
Lance, you are hitting us up with some gemstones tonight.
Do you have your tickets for the movie?
I do.
All right. So how we apprehend this, how we understand this, we're all, everybody here, there's what, 10 people, 15 people here right now, we're all reasonably intelligent. We have precious human life. We qualify for the 8 leisures and the 10 endowments. If you read this, text, it's identified there. We're not going to go into the karma tonight. We're not going to go into the suffering of samsara tonight, but we've been talking about things like this. And now it's time for us to be able to seize the opportunity to practice this. Otherwise it's just vicarious experience. Zara is saying something that's inspirational. Michael's saying something that's inspirational. Gary is, we're all, Louisa, maybe I say something, but it's vicarious until we say, yeah, I know what that is because I've experienced that myself. And why each of you who have said that I've experienced that is because you were practicing some form of meditation to get to this level. And you have a gnosis. Gnosis means to know it yourself, to become it, to be the embodiment of that. If we don't give ourselves the opportunity for the gnosis, it's just vicarious experience, and it's going to go in just a matter of time. But once you have it, you'll never lose it. Otherwise, how did you get here? How is it that you have this life? Why do you have this precious life? You know, you don't realize it, but it's because of things that happened before that you can't trace, that you can't see. But yet you're living that life that has these precious qualities about it. So now taking it to the next step means, okay, I not only got to stick my toe in the water, now I got to immerse myself into that wonderful pool of experience. Okay. Anybody else got anything you'd like to say?
Lance, now I think about like how many more lifetimes I have to work out my samsara attachments. I'm just kind of joking, but I finally understood something about that was profound for me, at least on a personal level, like the attachment, like you said, the seduction of samsara, and like you're reborn because you are addicted to it. It's like this like sugar, right? Or caffeine or something. And I finally understood it, Lance, because I recognized I was in it and I was like, you love this, Sarah. Why would you want to let this go? I finally understood it because like you said, I've been listening to you talk about it. And then when I was like, this is it. You are addicted to samsara. This is what all those teachings are, and you're catching it right now. So yeah.
Now do you feel like you're getting addicted to spirituality, or is it the spirituality that has brought you that realization?
The spirituality, yeah. The second thing you're saying. And I think it's interesting, right? Like this journey, and like that's why I think you need a guide. That's why I need like you. I need my Lance and this community, because there's times where it, like it's too intellectual and like you can get like the middle, right? The middle. Where's the middle? And that's confusing. That's really confusing sometimes. All of it is. The whole experience of being in a human body is very confusing.
Sure. Well, that's what this is all about. And fortunately, you're going to have many years of practice to be able to become effortless with that.
Lance, question. Do you think that, or anyone who wants to answer this, I feel like, we live in the United States, which is a place of privilege, right? Like of conventional privilege based off of things. Does anyone think it's easier to actually transcend some of the samsara in other countries where there is less distraction, like there's less conventional samsaric distraction? So I think, Ed, or you were talking about like the primal need to survive, right? The basics, like off the hierarchy, but like, are the people that don't actually have all these other things, like they're actually maybe the ones that are reborn I don't know. I'm like thinking about it very intellectually.
Think of the Tibetans. Have you seen any of the Tibetan films about Tibet before, it was taken over and so on like that? And the people were they're very primitive,
right.
From a technological point of view and so on. But yet they were happy people.
Yeah.
They weren't complaining.
Right.
They were satisfied. They had tough lives, but it was part of their being a human being. It was part of their practice. And here they were on top of the world, and their life, the common thread in their life was the Buddhism, and forget the Buddhism, that it was the holy enlightened mind, that it was bodhicitta, that they were living that enlightened life. It wasn't easy, it had physical issues about it, but at the same time, they had love, they had devotion, they had compassion, they had loving kindness, and so on like that.
You sent us a film recently. It's in WhatsApp. I assume it's still in WhatsApp. I watched it. Made in about 1943.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it spoke to that, didn't it? So yeah, so we don't have to, this technology can be a curse.
Yeah.
You know, we've got so much freedom that we're just intoxicated with it.
Right.
And addicted to it.
Yeah.
But it's not the answer.
Right. And I wondered because people have said like being born in like a first world country like allows you to explore, like, because all these other things are like I don't have to struggle for food or educate. I kind of have been diving into that in my head a little bit and saying, yeah, but then there's all these other replacement issues, right? In a more advanced society that I think are actually more addictive from a samsaric analysis. But anyways, I cut someone off. Did someone else have a comment?
I just want to share one personal experience. So this is my first time joining this group, and it's very, very helpful. And I loved everyone's insights and lensed guide on this. So I truly appreciate this. The reasons why I join such discussion and teaching is personally, I'm not, trying to achieve enlightenment or Buddhahood or anything. I have my own personal issues in the sense like things that I need to deal with in life that we all do. So on. Like you have kids, how to handle with the kids with a peace of mind, with the inner strength. So there are often times where what is happening around life is trying me out. So when I turn to Buddha Dharma, it is helping me to calm me down, bring me peace of mind. And earlier, what some of you said, like how the third world country people are a little more peaceful or so on. So I was in Nepal. So I'm a Tibetan. I was in Nepal, and there were times where I worked there for my monthly salary is like $100 for monthly salary. And at that time, and comparing to what I am earning now, it is it's like a sky and earth kind of differences. But I was more happier when I was there in Nepal, making $100 a month and living a very peaceful, happy life. Here in the United States, no concerns with the there's the material kind of well-beings or material comforts. So you have this thing is hot shower and live in ACs, all foods you can eat and so on. But somehow my peace of mind, my happiness has never been better here than when my material the possessions that I have is much less. So what I can say is that money doesn't really make us happy. Just giving my personal example, and this discussing Buddha, samsara, anything really helped me to deal with it. So I'm trying to gain something from this discussion to just deal with my own small personal issues and help me to solve those. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Dorji. Okay, so we've come to the time of our dedication. So we use our prayer book, and we'll go to the dedication prayer by Lord Jigden Sumgun on page 21. So if you can recite this along with me, would be wonderful. But this encapsulated in this one prayer is like everything that we've been talking about, and that which we still need to talk about is this prayer is a magnificent prayer. Glorious, holy, venerable, precious, kind root and lineage lamas, divine assembly of yidams and assemblies of Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, Yogins, Yoginis, and Dakinis, dwelling in the 10 directions, please hear my prayer. May the virtues collected in the 3 times by myself and all sentient beings in samsara and nirvana, and the innate word of virtue, not result in the 8 worldly concerns, the 4 causes of samsara, or rebirth as a Shravaka or Pratyeka Buddha. May all mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me and mine, obstructors who harm, misleading Mars, and the hordes of demons experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly attain unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. By the power of this vast root of virtue, may I benefit all beings through my body, speech, and mind. May the afflictions of desire, hatred, ignorance, arrogance, and jealousy not arise in my mind. May attachment to fame, reputation, wealth, honor, and concern for this life, for even a moment. May my mind stream be moistened by loving kindness, compassion, and bodhicitta, and through that may I become a spiritual master with good qualities equal to the infinity of space. May I gain the supreme attainment of Mahamudra in this very life. May the torment of suffering not arise even at the time of my death. May I not die with negative thoughts. May I not die confused by wrong view. May I not experience an untimely death. May I die joyfully and happily in the great luminosity of the mind as such and the pervading clarity of Dharmata. May I, in any case, gain the supreme attainment of Mahamudra at the time of death or in the bardo. Om, Ah, Hum. Om, Ah, Hum. Om, Ah, Hum. May my body, speech, and mind become inseparable with the body, speech, and mind of all the enlightened ones for the benefit of all sentient beings. Thank you all very much for staying with us tonight and contributing all your comments and all your thoughts. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lance.
Thank you, Lance.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Lance. Thank
You're
you.
welcome. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
I'm glad
thank
that
you.
Dorje